Kia ora team, welcome to another online tutorial. Today we're going to be looking through the role of DNA and inheritance, an old question from 2013, but a question that plays through pretty regularly on most level 1 NCEA genetic examinations. So let's get to it. So we're going to start off with A. I'm not going to write down my exact answer for two reasons. One, I've got limited space. And two, you could just look up the model answer if that's what you come for. I'm going to talk through and annotate my main ideas and what I think you should talk about in an answer. So for A, we want to link these things: chromosomes, genes, alleles, phenotype, genotype, and the molecule DNA. I'm going to start at the lowest level, okay? The smallest of the bunch, DNA, our deoxyribonucleic acid, right? And it is our genetic information or code, okay? And it has a double helix structure. And please forgive my terrible drawing skills, but I'm going to attempt to quickly jot one down, and that looks terrible, but that's all right. Now, our DNA forms long chains, which make our chromosomes, okay, of which we have 46 in the form of 23 pairs. For boys, 22 of those will be homologous. If you're a girl, 23 will be, okay? Now, our chromosomes are again long strands of DNA. If we get a section of DNA or a section of that chromosome that codes for a trait, it's a gene. How does it code for these things? It would be along the base pairs on our DNA molecule, okay? Remembering that A goes with T and G goes with C. Now, I'll draw that out a bit bigger, but I'm kind of running out of space. So to recap quickly, we've got DNA, double helix structure. It has these things called base pairs that would make up the rung of our double helix or twisted ladder. They go in the form of A, T, and G, C. Now, these, in their order, are actually the code, okay? The instructions, and they make up our particular instructions for a particular trait. They would be our genes, okay? Long strands of this DNA, containing multiple genes, form a chromosome. Now, those chromosomes comes in pairs, okay? We've got 46 together and 23 pairs, one of each from each parent. Okay, so we've got our chromosomes. Now, our section or our genes, there can be different types. Okay, there's different versions. Are our alleles. Okay, and we can give an example of different versions of the same gene. We could have brown eyes or blue eyes, like they have in the question. Okay, so we have these coded sections of DNA that code for a trait, which are our genes. We can have different versions of those genes, which we call alleles. Okay, example, brown eyes and blue eyes. Now, these can be dominant or recessive and are denoted with a capital or a lowercase. Okay, now the genes you have for a particular trait, or the alleles that you have, are or is our genotype. Okay, it's our genotype. The genes we have for a particular trait is our genotype. All our DNA is our genome. So, if you have a genotype, you are going to have a trait. Okay, and the physical expression of this genotype is our phenotype. Okay, so let's run through that again quickly. We have our DNA, our genetic code, comes in the structure of a double helix. The rings or rungs of that double helix, are our base pairs that always code A, T, and G, C. Okay, now that code will code for a particular trait, which we call a gene. That can be different versions of that gene, which we call alleles, and we've given the example brown eyes and blue eyes. Okay, the genes we have for a particular trait make up our genotype. The physical expression of that trait is our phenotype. Okay, so that's answered, or in part, has answered part A. Okay, so I'm quickly going to erase all this because I need the space now again to talk about B. So B, the allele for brown eyes, big B, and I'm going to mark that off, okay, is dominant over the recessive allele, little b, for blue eyes. Okay. Discuss how it would be possible for a child to have blue eyes even though both their parents have brown eyes. Okay. We know that to have the physical expression of our recessive allele, the child has to be homozygous recessive, little b, okay? But our parents, okay, have the gene for brown eyes present because they express that dominant allele. But they have passed on somehow our recessive. So they must have both these genes present. So we know that the parents, must be heterozygous, or big B, little b. Okay? So we can actually show that with the Punnett Square. Now, if I'm going to do this, I'll put parent 1 and parent 2. Okay. Now I'm going to draw out their genotype. Now we've discussed that they both have to be heterozygous. Otherwise, they can't pass on that recessive gene if they don't have it. Okay, so I'll crudely whack up some squares for a Punnett square. Okay, and I'm going to go through this. I'm going to start at the top. I normally start with our dominant alleles solely because then they're up front in our Punnett square. It kind of looks good. But I'm just going to put the parental ones split in quickly. Big B, little b, big B, little b. And I'm going to go through for our dominants. Okay. And big B, little b, little b. Now, cool. Just done our quick Punnett square. Now we remember that each square is a 25% chance of occurrence. Okay. Now, there's 3 possible genotypes for the offspring. We have our homozygous dominant, we have our heterozygous, and we have our homozygous recessive. Which in this scenario is the only possibility that could give an offspring with blue eyes, the recessive gene. Okay, so we've shown that 2 parents that have the dominant gene or phenotype expressed can also carry that recessive allele and pass that on. Okay, so let's just check that we've answered the question. In our answer, it says that we should use a labeled Punnett square, and that we should link the genotypes and phenotypes of the parents, child, and grandparents. Okay, so let's talk about that last bit now. We know that the child has to be little b, little b. There's just no other way. Otherwise, they wouldn't express the recessive allele. We know both parents have to be heterozygous, big B, little b. Because we know they've got brown eyes, but they have to have this gene to pass it on. It doesn't just come out of nowhere. Okay? And what can we infer about the grandparents? Well, some of the grandparents has to have had blue eyes. Otherwise, where did the parents get it from? Now, that could be in a heterozygous matchup like we've seen in this particular question, or it could have been grandparents who are pure breeding, homozygous, recessive homozygous dominant, creating 100% heterozygous offspring. We don't know. We don't have the proof to make sure that. No, we don't have the information to infer that, but we know that at least one of each of the parents of our offspring in this question's parents, so the grandparents, has to have had blue eyes for each side of the family. Okay. Hopefully that's been helpful, team. Hopefully it helps you get out there and answer some questions. You can use this as a guide to help you answer anything. Remember, check your answer against exemplars and marking schedules to see if you've missed anything. Thinking for the future. Give it your best shot.